I had just come in from watering the front lawn when my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text, short, simple, and devastating. "Don't come to my wedding. It's not your place anymore." No signature, no context, just those words. But I didn't need to guess who it was from. My daughter, Tessa. I stood there for a moment, sweat clinging to the back of my neck, garden hose still hissing softly beside my shoes. My heart sank before my mind had time to catch up. I must have read the message 10 times before finally turning off the water and sitting down on the porch step. The sky was clear, the yard quiet. Birds chirped like nothing had happened. But in that moment, something inside me cracked. Tessa had been my whole world once. After her mother passed 10 years ago now, she and I had clung to each other like life rafts in a storm. I raised her through every hard year, from scraped knees and late-night fevers to breakups and prom nights. I was there when she got into college, helped her move into her dorm, even co-signed her student loan when scholarships fell short. And now, she didn't want me at her wedding. Not a conversation, not even a call, just a text. A part of me wanted to believe it was a mistake. Maybe she was angry. Maybe someone had taken her phone. But deep down, I knew better. This had been building for a while, quietly, subtly. It started after she met Grant, the man she's now marrying. He was polished, confident, the kind of guy who made you feel like you were always 2 steps behind in the conversation. His parents, the Davenports, owned a chain of private medical clinics. Old money, polite but with a chill beneath the surface. You could feel it when they smiled. After Tessa got engaged, things shifted. Calls became brief. Visits were rescheduled. She stopped bringing me up in conversation, and when I asked about the wedding plans, she brushed me off with vague answers. Now I understood why. I sat on that porch for hours that day, thinking about everything I'd done for her. Every late-night shift I worked to afford her tuition. Every holiday I spent alone so she could travel with her college friends. Every time I said yes when it cost me sleep, money, or peace. And yet, when it came to the biggest day of her life, I wasn't even welcome. I didn't text back. I didn't beg, but I did something else. I picked up the landline phone that rarely rang anymore, the one with the rotary dial and heavy receiver. I dialed a number I hadn't used in years. 3 rings. Then a voice answered. Connor Holloway speaking. Connor was an old friend. Not close but sharp. Ex-military turned forensic accountant. He once helped me during a company audit when I was still working in finance. We hadn't spoken in nearly a decade. "I need your help," I said. "You sound like hell." "I feel worse." He waited. He was always patient like that. Then I told him everything. About the wedding, about Grant, about the Davenports and their 2 perfect smiles. And most importantly, about the feeling I couldn't shake, that something about all of this wasn't right. "I'm not looking to sabotage a wedding," I told him. Connor let out a low breath. "Good, because what you're asking for sounds like you want to dig." "I want the truth," I said. "And if it turns out I've been erased from my own daughter's life for a lie, then yes, I'll burn it all down." There was a pause. Then he said, "I'll get started tonight." I didn't know then what Connor would find. I didn't know how deep the rot went. All I knew was this: they had cut me out like I was nothing. And that message was the first mistake they made. Because they forgot who I was before I was her father. And they had no idea what I was capable of when left behind. 2 days after I called Connor, he sent me a single sentence by text: "You were right to call." No details, no files, just that. But coming from Connor, it meant the soil under the Davenports' polished lawn wasn't clean. That weekend I pulled into a quiet cafe on the edge of town, where Connor had asked to meet. It was the kind of place where time seemed to slow. Yellowed menus, chipped ceramic mugs, and windows that hadn't been washed since before the pandemic. Connor was already there when I arrived, sipping black coffee and wearing that same worn leather jacket he used to swear he'd retire. "Thanks for coming," I said, sliding into the booth. "You're not gonna like this," he replied without looking up. He pulled out a folder, thick and heavy, and pushed it toward me. Cliff Notes version: the Davenports aren't just rich. They're layered in shell companies, offshore holdings, and enough backdoor dealings to make the IRS blush. I blinked. "Criminal?" He shrugged. "Depends on the lens. To the public, they're philanthropists. To the state of Delaware, they're 6 different corporations. To the Bahamas, let's just say they don't vacation there for the weather." I started flipping through the papers. Bank statements, property records, stock manipulation charts, and at the center of it all the name Grant Davenport Jr., Tessa's fiancé. Connor pointed to one line item. This right here? A 7-figure consulting payment that went through a dummy firm and landed in Grant's personal account. That's not family money. That's laundering 101. I stared at the pages. Tessa doesn't know. I bet my pension on it, he said. She's being dazzled jewelry, promises yacht parties, the whole deal. But if they're cutting you out, it's not just emotional, it's strategic. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. You were a liability, Cole. They didn't want a father at the wedding who might ask the wrong questions. Something in me hardened. All the memories, the missed calls, the distancing, the smug looks I used to get from Grant's parents when we met, snapped into place like puzzle pieces. They didn't just want to remove me from her life. They wanted her to belong to them. And she was walking in with her eyes closed. Connor watched me process it, then said, "So, what do you want to do?" I closed the folder slowly. I'm not burning this down in public. Not yet. Connor raised an eyebrow. Not yet? No. First, I'm going to watch them prepare for the perfect wedding. Let them smile for the cameras, sip champagne, pose with fake grace. Then, I looked him dead in the eye. Then I'm going to make sure their house of cards collapses right in front of the altar. That night, I went home and stared at the photo on my mantle. Tessa, age 10, holding a fishing rod almost taller than she was, her smile lopsided from a missing tooth. I traced her outline with my thumb and whispered, "I'm not doing this to hurt you, baby. I'm doing it to protect the part of you that still remembers who we were." And somewhere deep in my gut, I knew, by the time this wedding was over, nothing about their perfect shell would remain. The invitation arrived exactly 1 week after Connor's reveal. Thick paper, gold trim, embossed lettering that screamed wealth. Mr. and Mrs. Grant Davenport Sr. cordially invite you to the wedding of Miss Tessa Holloway and Grant Davenport Jr. at the Wexley Estate, June 10th, 4 p.m. No mention of me. No father of the bride, just a token line at the bottom. Kindly refrain from attending unless formally listed. It wasn't an oversight, it was a warning. I placed the invitation back into the envelope without tearing it. Let them think I was folding. Let them believe I'd stay in the shadows like they planned. But behind the scenes I was already moving pieces. Connor got me into the tasting. He posed as a vendor floral designer of all things, who'd worked with the Davenports planner on another high-end event. He got the date, time, and guest list for the menu sampling. And then, with a quick favor called in, he added me to the head count as an anonymous investor invited by the estate. Nobody questioned it. Rich people never look twice when another potential donor shows up with a tailored blazer and quiet shoes. The tasting was held in a private lounge at Langford Vineyards, a location as pretentious as it was picturesque. The kind of place where the napkins cost more than my mortgage used to. I arrived 5 minutes early and took a seat at the end of the long table. The room was filled with polite murmurs and the clinking of glass. A quartet played softly in the corner. Waiters drifted by with samples: seared scallops, foie gras, truffle mousse on miniature toast points. And then they walked in. Grant, Tessa, the Davenports. All smiles, all silk. They didn't even glance at me. Tessa looked beautiful. Not in the bridal gown kind of way, she wasn't wearing that yet, but in the effortless, elegant way that told me someone else had picked out her dress, her shoes, maybe even her words. She seemed rehearsed. The sparkle I remembered, the one she used to have when she talked about anything she loved, was dulled under layers of curated perfection. They sat near the center, surrounded by planners and coordinators. I kept my eyes down, sipping wine I couldn't pronounce. Until I heard her laugh. It wasn't the kind that bubbled up from joy. It was sharp, polished, like an actress hitting her cue. That was the moment I knew I hadn't lost my daughter. They had taken her. Midway through the tasting, a waiter leaned toward Grant and discreetly handed him an envelope. His smile twitched. He opened it under the table, thinking no one noticed, but I saw it. Inside, a photo. Blown-up bank receipt. One of the files Connor had uncovered, the payment trail. Grant went pale. He whispered something to his father, who stiffened, then casually stood and exited through a side door. I watched every movement, and sipped my wine. Connor had delivered the first quiet shot, just enough to rattle the walls, not enough to collapse the house. After the tasting ended, Tessa passed by my table. Her eyes flicked toward me, just a flick, and in that half second I saw it. Recognition, shame, fear. But she didn't stop, didn't speak, didn't blink twice, just walked on. That night Connor called. "They received the package," he said. "We're being watched now." "Good," I replied. "They know someone's coming after them." I smiled. "They just don't know it's her father." The night after the tasting I couldn't sleep, not because of nerves, not fear, because I saw her eyes again. Tessa's. The flash of hesitation, the way she didn't stop but couldn't quite look away. It haunted me more than her silence ever had. She knew. Somewhere deep down she knew I had been there. And she didn't come after me. Not then. The next day I took out a wooden chest from the back of my closet. It had sat there since Evelyn's funeral, dusty, untouched, locked. Inside were letters, photos, drawings Tessa had made when she was little. One picture, drawn in crayon, had a wobbly stick figure labeled Dad standing beside a sailboat. A sun with a smiling face hovered over us. I traced my finger along the edges of the page, then folded it and placed it in my coat pocket. If I was going to wage war, I needed to remember who I was fighting for, not against. Connor called around noon. "They're scrubbing," he said. "The Davenports, yeah, pulling funds, re-registering assets, closing down the dummy corporations. They've caught the scent. That fast? They're rich, not dumb. But they're not fast enough." He paused, then added, "I also found something new. There's a property in Vermont, under Tessa's name." I frowned. "Tessa doesn't own anything." "She does now. A shell firm transferred the deed last week." "Why?" "My guess. It's a tax move. But also insurance. If things go sideways, they'll pin something to her name and walk away clean." That was it. That was the crack in the foundation. They weren't just using her for status. They were setting her up as a shield. I sat back in my chair, every nerve in my body humming. For months I'd been trying to make sense of the distance, the lies, the coldness. Now I saw it for what it was. They weren't planning a wedding. They were orchestrating a heist, and Tessa was the collateral damage. That night I attended a fundraising gala in the city, one I knew the Davenports would be at. I didn't go as myself. I went as a guest of Connor's contact, dressed sharp, wearing glasses, and going by the name Harold Benton. It was a masquerade in every sense of the word. I blended in with the suits and cocktail dresses, smiled when prompted, nodded politely at names I didn't recognize. The Davenports were across the room. Charming donors sipping vintage wine like they hadn't just transferred dirty money into their future daughter-in-law's name. Then the music changed. A waltz. People began to pair off. And that's when I saw her. Tessa, standing by the pillar wearing a deep blue gown, her hair pinned back just like her mother used to wear it. I approached slowly, not close enough to scare her, just enough to let the music carry us into the same orbit. She turned, met my eyes. For a moment everything else disappeared. I extended my hand. "May I have this dance?" She hesitated, then nodded. We stepped into the center of the room. The chandelier glowed above us like a spotlight. We moved in rhythm, slowly, like neither of us knew the steps but didn't care to correct them. "I know it was you," she whispered. "You always were a smart girl," I said. "Why?" I looked at her, not the bride-to-be, not the pawn, but my daughter. "To save you." She blinked fast. Her voice cracked. "They told me you didn't want to come, that you said I was choosing the wrong life." "I never said that." "I know." The music swelled. People around us clapped and twirled. But we stayed still. "I don't know what to believe anymore," she said. "Then believe the man who taught you how to ride a bike, who cried with you at your mother's grave, who stayed when everyone else left." The music ended. She let go of my hand, stepped back. Her eyes shimmered. Then she walked away. Not angry, not scared, just torn. And as she disappeared into the crowd, I knew the battle wasn't over. But I had touched something real again. And the Davenports were about to learn. You can fake a smile, but you can't fake blood. The Vermont property wasn't listed under the Davenports' name. It wasn't even under Grant's. It was buried 3 layers deep, registered to a firm called Marble Finch Holdings, which was owned by another shell company located in Panama. But the final owner on paper? Tessa Marie Holloway. That was no accident. It was a trap. Connor and I drove up to see the property in person the following Thursday. The estate was remote, thick woods, gravel roads, and a wrought iron gate with cameras mounted on either side. It didn't look like a family home. It looked like a cleanup site, the kind of place you'd retreat to if the headlines got ugly. He glanced at the gate and muttered, "They're building her a cage, one she won't know she's locked in until it's too late." I stepped out and took a few photos from the road. Driveway, sign, perimeter. This wasn't a honeymoon gift. This was where they'd hide her when things collapsed. Later that night, Connor pulled up the financials tied to the Vermont property. Multiple large transactions had passed through its books: consulting services, property maintenance, and most tellingly, environmental disposal. Waste contracts, Connor muttered. But the numbers are too high for garbage. Wanna guess what they're really burying out here? I shook my head. Tax records, asset transfers, he nodded. All of it. And if this goes public, they'll pin it on her. The Davenports were planning for the storm. They always were. The real estate wasn't just a transfer of wealth. It was a lifeboat with Tessa tied to the wheel. But here's what they didn't expect. I was learning how to swim upstream. I contacted a family law attorney, someone I trusted from years ago, and explained the situation without naming names. He listened carefully, then said, "If you can prove they've knowingly transferred criminal assets into her name, we can intervene. But you'll need evidence. Documents, timing, motive." "I've got motive," I said. "Then go get the rest." That weekend, Connor and I drove back to the estate, this time at night. He disabled the outer motion sensors. I picked the lock on the gate. Not proud, but sometimes being an old man with too many tools comes in handy. We crept up the long driveway in darkness. No alarms, no lights, just silence and moonlight. Inside the guest house behind the main building, we found what we were looking for: a locked file cabinet. We forced it open, and there it was, clear as day. A transfer deed dated 2 weeks ago, with Tessa's digital signature. A cover letter from the Davenport's lawyer, stating, "As agreed, the property and related accounts will reflect Miss Holloway as the sole beneficiary, effective immediately." And a check receipt, $750,000 deposited into a Vermont holding bank under Tessa's name. Connor whistled. "They really did it. They think no one will question it," I said. "They think she'll never even see it," he replied. We copied everything, scanned, photographed, backed up twice. Then we left without a trace. On the way back, I looked out at the blur of trees and whispered to myself, "You're not losing her to them. You're bringing her back." But even then, I didn't know how much it would cost, because exposing the truth, that was just step one. The real challenge would be making her believe it. The wedding was exactly 2 weeks away, and the pressure was showing. The Davenports had tightened their guest list, updated contracts, and added extra security. It was clear they suspected something or someone was watching. They just didn't know who. Yet, Connor sent me a photo one morning from inside the Wexley estate where the ceremony would take place. His contact had gotten him in under the guise of event lighting technician. The photo showed a pristine gilded guest list mounted on an easel in the entrance hall. The names were organized by social tier: family, friends, investors, distinguished guests. My name wasn't there, but his was. Grant's uncle, Donovan Rake. That name meant nothing to most people, but it meant a lot to federal investigators. Connor and I had uncovered him 3 days earlier in the asset trail. Rake was the one moving large amounts of cash through the Vermont property and several high-end condos in Miami. He was the laundering mechanism, a silent partner. I didn't need the IRS to tell me what that meant. If Donovan Rake was attending the wedding, he wasn't just celebrating. He was ensuring everything stayed quiet. That same afternoon, I received a package on my doorstep. No return address. Inside, a single photo. Me. At the tasting. The back read, "Stay home. This doesn't concern you." No signature. No fingerprints. No subtlety, either. They were watching me. But here's what they didn't understand. I had been invisible for months now, ignored, underestimated, erased. I knew how to disappear in plain sight. That night, Connor and I met at his basement office. The walls were covered in maps, receipts, and family trees, like a war room. And in the center, an exact copy of the wedding layout, guest tables, security paths, and serving routes. "I don't want to ruin her day," I said. "I want to reclaim it." Connor nodded. "Then let's give her the truth." Not in whispers. In front of everyone. We worked for hours. He drafted an anonymous dossier with the property transfers, banking records, and laundering documents. No accusations, just evidence. I wrote a letter, 1 page, to Tessa. Simple, clear, unapologetic. "I love you, but you're being led into a trap. This is what they've done. This is what they're hiding. And this is how they plan to use your name to clean their sins. You can hate me for the timing, or you can thank me for the truth. We packed everything, photos, documents, the letter, into 30 white envelopes. One for every VIP guest, one for each Davenport, one for the officiant, one for Tessa, and we arranged for them all to be delivered during the wedding ceremony, tucked inside each guest's gift bag, handed discreetly by a team of temporary servers we hired through Connor's network. No spectacle, just quiet shock. I didn't plan on attending. I didn't need to. The truth would walk in without me, but the next day something changed. A letter arrived. This one from Tessa, in her handwriting. I saw you at the gala. I didn't stop because I was afraid, but I know you're trying to protect me. If you know something I don't, please, come. Asterisk. The envelope shook in my hands. After everything, she still wanted me there. And that's when I knew the day wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about rescue. I arrived at the Wexley estate 30 minutes before the ceremony. Not through the main gate, through the back, dressed in a navy suit Evelyn once bought me for a work banquet we never attended. I hadn't worn it since. Still fit, mostly, a little tighter at the shoulders, a little looser at the heart. The estate looked like a magazine spread. Cherry blossom petals scattered perfectly across the stone walkway, a string quartet warming up under a white canopy, champagne flutes sparkling on every silver tray. It was everything the Davenports had promised. Perfection, manufactured, curated, lifeless. Guests began arriving by the dozen, polished, powerful, unbothered. They didn't know, not yet, but each one took their gift bag from our hired staff, smiling politely as they accepted the neatly sealed envelope tucked inside. Inside those envelopes? Everything. A reckoning dressed as paper. I stood in the far back, beyond the seating rows, half shielded by a floral column. I wasn't on the list, but I didn't need to be. My presence wasn't about ceremony, it was about bearing witness. And then, the music began. The officiant took his place. Grant stepped forward in a crisp tuxedo, smug as ever. The guests hushed, and the doors at the far end opened. There she was, Tessa, my daughter. She walked slowly, carefully, every step elegant, precise, yet somehow heavy. Her gown shimmered under the summer light, her veil fluttered with the breeze. Her eyes scanned the crowd until they found mine, and locked. The moment paused, just a heartbeat. Then she smiled. Not for the cameras, not for the guests, for me. It wasn't bright, but it was real. She reached the altar. The officiant cleared his throat. Dearly beloved. But halfway through the first sentence, movement rippled through the rows. Whispers, shuffling, guests opening envelopes, brows furrowing, eyes darting to each other. The officiant faltered. Grant glanced at his father, and then from the second row someone stood. The mayor of Carleton. He turned to the Davenports and said loudly, "What is this? Why am I reading about offshore accounts in a wedding gift?" Then another guest stood, and another. Gasps, chairs scraping. Confusion turned to alarm. Grant tried to speak, but his microphone had been cut. Connor's touch. His father stepped forward, trying to usher Tessa off the platform, but she didn't move. She held the envelope in her hands, unopened, shaking. I stepped forward slowly into the light. Grant saw me, and for the first time, he looked afraid. Tessa turned to me, still holding the letter. She opened it, read. Her lips trembled. The guests were now murmuring in full volume. Phones came out. Papers were passed. The perfect wedding was unraveling, and at the center of it all stood my daughter, no longer just a bride. Now, a woman standing at the edge of truth. She looked up at Grant, then at me, then down again at the ring box in his hand. She took a deep breath and said, loud enough for the whole estate to hear, "I need to speak to my father, alone." And just like that, the ceremony shattered. The staff cleared the patio in silence. No music, no toasts, no laughter echoing off the marble fountains. The wedding had collapsed like a house built on borrowed time. And Tessa, she didn't cry, she didn't run, she walked. Straight into the estate's private lounge, letter still in hand, veil trailing behind her like a ghost of what this day was supposed to be. I followed a few steps behind, ignoring the glares from the Davenports. Grant tried to stop her. She didn't look at him. The room she entered had once been designed for champagne and photo ops. Now, it became a courtroom. She stood near the fireplace, still in her gown, still radiant but stripped of ceremony. "Just my daughter again. Is it all true?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "Yes." She held up the envelope. Every line. "Yes." She turned away, looked at the wall for a long time, silent. Still, I waited. Let her breathe. Let her bleed in private. Then she said, "They told me you were jealous, that you were bitter because you weren't needed anymore." I didn't speak. She turned to face me. Her voice was tighter now. "They said you were trying to ruin my future out of spite." I know. Tears welled in her eyes, but didn't fall, and I believed them. Now I stepped closer, not to scold, not to win, just to speak plainly. "You believed them because they gave you something I couldn't." She blinked. Luxury, power, a sense of place. She shook her head, but none of it was real. I nodded slowly. "No, but you wanted it to be." She finally sat, the gown pulled around her like a broken wave. I read the entire letter. I saw the transfer to Vermont, the documents, the money. They were building their future on your name. I said, "So when the foundation cracked, you'd be the one buried under it." Her hands trembled. "All those months, I thought you didn't want to be involved." I was watching. She looked up. "So what happens now?" That was the question, wasn't it? Because this wasn't a victory. It wasn't revenge. It was grief. The grief of knowing your love had been weaponized, that your trust had been a tool in someone else's game. I sat beside her. "The house is still full of guests," I said. "Some of them holding evidence they don't yet understand. What should I do?" I handed her a flash drive. "Give this to the authorities. There's enough to open an investigation, maybe more." She looked at it like it weighed 100 pounds. "What about Grant? That's your decision now." Silence again. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I still love him." I didn't flinch. "Love doesn't make you stupid, Tessa. But ignoring the truth does." She nodded. Once. Then stood. Walked to the window, and watched the guests leave. No applause. No rice tossed. No smiling photos, just confused silence and footsteps over gravel. When she turned back, her voice was steady. "Walk me out." I smiled gently. Always, we walked past the rose arches, past the emptied chairs, past the crumbled image of perfection the Davenports had tried so hard to build. And as we reached the parking circle, a police car pulled up. Tessa held the flash drive tight in her palm. Her hand didn't shake anymore. The sun was setting by the time Tessa handed the flash drive to the detective. No hesitation, no second guessing, just a quiet nod and a look in her eyes that said, "I know this changes everything," and it did. Within 48 hours, subpoenas were filed. The Vermont property was frozen. 3 Davenport business accounts were flagged by the SEC, and Donovan Rake, he vanished. No trace, no flights logged, just gone. Connor called me with updates like a man reading off weather warnings. "This storm's going national," he said. I didn't smile, didn't cheer. It wasn't over yet. Not for Tessa. She called me the next day. Said she'd moved back into her old apartment downtown. Alone. No Grant. No designer furniture. No curated playlists humming through the smart speakers. Just her. And silence. I offered to bring groceries. She declined. Said she needed to sit with it. Feel it all. "I spent the last year pretending I was someone else," she said. "Now I need to figure out who I was before them." I respected that. She was her mother's daughter after all. Evelyn never healed on someone else's timeline. Meanwhile, the media frenzy began to build. At first it was whispers. Then headlines. Wedding turns to fraud investigation. Socialite family tied to shell companies. Grant Davenport steps down from executive role. The Davenports tried to contain it. Hired PR firms. Issued vague statements about misunderstandings and misplaced paperwork. But the paper trail didn't lie, and neither did the timing. One afternoon I received a letter in the mail. No stamp, no name, just a single sheet of expensive stationery. "You destroyed your daughter's future. I hope you can live with that." No signature, but I recognized the handwriting. Grant. I folded it twice and dropped it into the trash. If he thought her future was tied to his money, he never knew her at all. Connor sent me another report a week later. More assets uncovered. A property in Portugal, a trust in the Caymans, a scholarship foundation that never actually funded students. It was unraveling. One lie at a time, and all because of one truth. Tessa finally looked. But it wasn't just her name they were trying to clean money through. Connor found documents where they'd begun forming a joint account under Tessa and Grant Davenport. Projected deposits in the millions. Once the honeymoon was over, they'd have turned her into a financial mule and walked away when the tax man knocked. I met her for coffee that weekend. She looked tired, but clearer. I had no idea, she said, tapping the rim of her cup. They built it to hide from people like you, I said. Her laugh was small. Well, I guess they weren't hiding hard enough. She looked at me then, really looked. I'm sorry for what I said, what I didn't say. That text I sent, I raised a hand gently. We don't need to relive it. She nodded. Still, she whispered, I should have known better. You've never walked away from me. There was a pause. She reached into her bag and pulled out the envelope from the wedding. The original one. The one that held the letter I wrote. She unfolded it carefully, like it meant something now. Like she wanted to remember it. Word for word. I read it every morning, she said. Why? Because it reminds me that someone still stands behind me. A week after the investigation made the evening news, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. It was the Attorney General's office. Formal voice. Serious tone. Mr. Holloway, your testimony regarding the Vermont transfer and the documents provided by Miss Holloway will be requested under oath. Are you willing to cooperate? I didn't hesitate. Yes. I hung up and sat in silence for a while. Not because I was nervous, because I never thought this would be my role in her wedding aftermath. Tessa had always believed in fairy tales. In her world, gifts came in boxes tied with bows. Apologies came with flowers. Justice came after the music faded and the lights dimmed. But real life, it doesn't gift wrap closure. It hands it to you raw, cracked, and unspoken. Later that day, I went up to the attic and opened an old trunk Evelyn had kept. Inside were boxes of keepsakes, hand-sewn baby clothes, her wedding shoes, and a velvet pouch I didn't recognize. Inside the pouch was a chain. A simple silver pendant. No note. No explanation. Just something she must have meant to give to Tessa someday. I cleaned it, wrapped it in tissue, and placed it in a small wooden box. No bow. No card. Just the pendant. A real gift. Not money. Not insurance. Something meant to say, you were always loved. That evening I knocked on Tessa's apartment door. She opened it in a hoodie and slippers. No makeup. Her hair in a bun. She looked more like herself than she had in a year. Hey, she said. Hey. I handed her the box. No explanations. Just something from your mother. She opened it slowly. Her breath caught. I've never seen this before. She was waiting for the right time. I said. Maybe this is it. We sat on the couch after that. Watched old family videos on her laptop. One showed her dancing in the kitchen with Evelyn holding a wooden spoon like a microphone. I hadn't seen that clip in years. She laughed softly. We were so loud back then. You had good lungs. You used to say I'd grow up to be a lawyer. You argued like one. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I miss her. I know. The next morning she texted me a photo. She was wearing the pendant. Just that. No caption. But I understood what it meant. Meanwhile, the Davenports were sinking fast. Donovan Rake had been detained in Panama. Grant's father was under house arrest pending tax charges. And Grant himself. He was suddenly very quiet. No more press statements. No more public appearances. Just silence. And shame. I didn't feel triumphant. Just relieved. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't ruin. It's recovery. The world moved on. But Tessa and I, we started again. Weekly dinners. Unfiltered conversations. No curated filters. No performance. Just us. One night, over spaghetti and garlic bread, she said, "You know, I don't even miss the wedding." I looked up. Not even a little. She grinned. I think what came after mattered more. The ring was still sitting in her jewelry tray, perfectly polished, untouched. She hadn't pawned it, hadn't thrown it into the river, hadn't mailed it back. She just left it there, as if even the act of deciding what to do with it felt unfinished. One Sunday afternoon, I stopped by with a bag of groceries, her favorites, sun-dried tomatoes, garlic-stuffed olives, and that overpriced brand of sourdough she swore by. She met me at the door, holding up the ring. I think I'm ready. For what? I asked. To let it go. We drove to a small lake outside of town, not the dramatic ocean cliff kind of place, just a quiet dock, trees swaying, water still. She held the ring in her palm for a long time, stared at it, rolled it between her fingers like it was a memory she could reshape. I thought it meant something, she said quietly. It did, I told her. Just not what they told you it meant. She nodded, then stepped forward and tossed it. Not with force, not with tears, just release. It made the smallest splash, almost too quiet to hear. But I swear the wind shifted. We sat on the dock afterward, feet dangling above the water. She asked me, "Do you think I was naive?" I thought for a second. I think you were hopeful. And that's not a bad thing, but I should have seen it coming. Maybe. Or maybe they were just very good at hiding it. She looked over at me. How did you know? Because I've been where you were. I've trusted people who smiled while they emptied your pockets. She laughed under her breath. We're a messed up pair, huh? I smiled. Maybe, but we're healing. The next week she sent out a notice to all the former wedding guests. A simple email. No apologies, no explanations, just the facts. Thank you for your concern and kindness during a difficult time. I've chosen to move forward on my own. I will not be pursuing marriage with Grant Davenport. I'm grateful for the support of those who offered it with honesty. She signed it with her full name, Tessa Marie Holloway. No add-ons, no hyphenates, no future misses. It made the local papers, not the scandal. Everyone already knew that. But her grace, the way she stood tall without slinging mud, people noticed and respected her for it. Connor and I had lunch not long after. He brought his usual dry sarcasm. You know you're officially the father of the year. Want me to get you a plaque? I chuckled. Only if it comes with free lawn care. We raised glasses, just iced tea, but it felt ceremonial. To daughters who wake up in time, he said. To fathers who don't stop watching, I added. When I got home there was a voicemail from Tessa. Hey, I just wanted to say thank you again. Not just for protecting me, but for never becoming the villain. Even when you had the chance. I didn't call back right away. Some messages are meant to sit in your chest for a while. To echo. To heal. To remind you that being a father isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. Spring came late that year. The trees outside my house were just beginning to bud when Tessa showed up unannounced. She knocked once and walked in, same as she used to when she was 17 and needed help with her math homework. She had that same energy again, nervous, determined, a little breathless. I've made a decision, she said, standing in the middle of my living room like it was a courtroom. I set down my book and gave her my full attention. I want to take over Mom's scholarship fund. That caught me off guard. Evelyn had started a small education fund before she passed. It was meant to grow quietly over the years, helping 1 or 2 underprivileged students attend college. We hadn't touched it, not after she died. It had sat there gathering interest, waiting. I want to rename it, Tessa said, the Holloway Foundation, and I want to do it properly. No trust loopholes, no shady boards, just clean, transparent help. I studied her face. There was no doubt in it. No performance, no borrowed language, just Tessa, the girl Evelyn and I raised, finally standing on her own. Are you sure? I asked. She nodded. They tried to build their empire on my name. I want to build something better with it. I didn't cry, but something shifted in my chest. Something settled, like a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for years. That week we went through old documents, files Evelyn had saved, photos of the first students she'd quietly helped. Tessa created a website, a mission statement, filed the paperwork, even met with local school boards. Connor offered legal oversight, free of charge. It's the least I can do, he said. Besides, I like happy endings. The Davenports meanwhile had all but vanished. Assets seized, reputation destroyed. Grant tried to reach out once, an email with 3 words. You were right. No reply needed. Tessa deleted it without blinking. Sometimes closure doesn't come with a confrontation. Sometimes silence is the answer. Months passed, and then one day she surprised me again. We were in the kitchen. She was helping me peel potatoes. The radio played something soft in the background. I met someone, she said. I looked up slowly. He's not rich, she added quickly. He teaches music at the elementary school, drives a beat-up truck, owns 1 suit. I raised an eyebrow. Does he know about the saga? She smiled. Bits and pieces. I told him the best parts, and the worst. Which one was I? She leaned over and kissed my cheek. The anchor. She stayed for dinner that night, and when she left, I stood at the door a little longer than usual, watching her walk to her car, hand clutching the pendant her mother left behind. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. We weren't broken anymore, just mended differently. Weeks later, I made one final change. I rewrote my will, not because I needed to, because I wanted to. The house, the sailboat, the savings, everything I'd worked for, it all went to one name, not as an apology, not out of guilt, but as a reminder that love, when it's real, survives the undoing. I had anchored it all where it mattered, not in dollars, not in vengeance, but in legacy. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments which city you're watching from. We'd love to know.